It started with a mission gone wrong, but no one expected it to end like this. Hulk stood in silence, fists clenched, his voice trembling as he finally spoke the words that shattered everything. "It was me. I killed them, and I hid it from all of you." Iron Man's eyes went wide. Captain America backed away like he'd seen a ghost. Thor raised Mjolnir, not in defense, but in rage. A betrayal deeper than any battle. A secret darker than Thanos. This isn't just a fight. This is the end of the Avengers as we know them. New York burned under a broken sky, but this time, there were no alien ships or godlike invaders. Only Earth's greatest heroes turning on each other. Iron Man rocketed through the remains of a shattered building, his armor scorched. Captain America chased him with fury in his eyes, shield drawn, not to protect, but to attack. Thor summoned lightning that cracked the sky, sending shockwaves through the ruins. And in the middle of the chaos stood Bruce Banner, motionless, silent, human. 48 hours earlier, everything had seemed normal. The Avengers had gathered at the helicarrier after another brutal mission overseas. The air was tense. Someone had leaked mission data to the enemy. Tony paced. Steve sat rigid. Thor stood like a statue, and Natasha watched everyone. But Bruce Banner, he shook. "I need to say something," Bruce murmured. No one responded at first. "Back in Sokovia, I made a choice. A terrible one." Tony stopped pacing. Steve raised an eyebrow. Thor crossed his arms. Bruce continued. "There was a building. Stark said it was a weapons facility. I went full Hulk and crushed it completely. Later, I found out it wasn't weapons. It was a shelter. Civilians. Kids." Silence strangled the room. "You're saying you killed innocent people?" Steve asked coldly. "I lied," Bruce said. "I covered it up. I told no one. Not even Natasha." Tony's voice cut in like a knife. "Don't put this on me. I never told you to hit that building." "You didn't," Bruce admitted. "But I was looking for a reason to smash. I was angry. I wanted to forget the monster." Thor's voice thundered. "And you thought hiding the truth would make you less of one?" "I'm turning myself in," Bruce said. "No," Steve replied, his voice hard. "You don't get to run from this." Natasha hadn't said a word. She stood, walked to Bruce, looked into his eyes, and slapped him. Hard. "I trusted you," she whispered. "You weren't afraid of the monster. You were afraid of the truth." Before anyone could react further, the lights went out. A harsh alarm blared. A red emergency beacon pulsed through the room. FRIDY's voice echoed. "Gamma surge detected. Unauthorized subject in Lab 7. They rushed downstairs. The glass walls of the lab were already shattered. Something huge had broken out. From the smoke, it emerged. Twisted, glowing green veins. A hulking body bigger than Hulk's, covered in armor-like skin. Its face a grotesque mirror of Bruce's. A beast. A clone. A nightmare. Tony stared in disbelief. "What is that?" "Project Echo," FRIDY confirmed. "Created using residual gamma DNA from Banner." Bruce fell to his knees. "No. They made a monster out of me." Echo moved fast. It swatted Thor aside, caught Cap's shield in midair, and slammed Tony into a wall. Its movements were familiar, too familiar. "It's learning," Bruce whispered. "It fights like me, but cleaner, more precise." Tony's suit recalibrated, charging his arc reactor. "Then we overload its memory." Echo turned and charged Bruce. That's when Tony realized Echo didn't want destruction. It wanted Bruce. The battle escalated. Steve fought with surgical precision. Thor rained lightning. Tony's AI deployed microdrones. But nothing stopped the beast. Not permanently. Unknown to the team, a figure watched from a dark surveillance chamber. Cloaked, calm, and efficient, the man tapped into the comms. Phase 1 complete. Hulk's confession destabilized the team. Echo is active. A voice replied from the other end of the communicator. Deep. Alien. Good. Let them fracture. The council will rise where the Avengers fall. The cloaked figure turned. Beneath the hood, Nick Fury. Back in the lab, Bruce activated a failsafe only he knew about. a sonic disruptor tied to Echo's brainwave signature. It worked for a moment. Echo staggered, roared, then vanished in a burst of gamma smoke, escaping into the night. But that wasn't the end. Natasha was gone. Only Bruce remained on the floor, unconscious and bleeding. And on the helicarrier's main screen, red words flashed. Divided heroes fall. The air inside the helicarrier was thick with smoke and confusion. Hulk was unconscious. Echo had vanished. And Natasha, gone without a trace. Captain America was the first to speak. She didn't just disappear. She was taken. Tony stared at the security feed looping on the screen. There was a 1-second blackout just before Natasha vanished. He zoomed in. Static. Corrupted footage. Someone cover their tracks. Thor's fist sparked with electric rage. She would not leave us. Not now. Not after what Banner said. Tony clenched his jaw. No. She didn't leave. She was extracted. Whoever activated Echo wanted her gone. Steve turned to FRIDAY. Are there any external signals? Tracking beacons, anything? The AI hesitated. There was a single encrypted frequency, piggybacked on our emergency channel. Source unknown. Run the trace, Tony ordered. No need, came a voice behind them. Everyone turned. Nick Fury stepped into the command room, eye patch gleaming, calm as ever. Steve narrowed his eyes. Fury, you've got a lot of explaining to do. Fury didn't blink. I didn't come to explain. I came to warn you. Tony laughed bitterly. That's rich, coming from a guy who ghosted for years and now walks in mid-apocalypse. Fury stepped forward. Echo isn't just a clone. It's a key. And it wasn't built by S.H.I.E.L.D. Steve's voice hardened. Then who? Fury looked around the room. The Alien Council. They've been building these for a decade, using scraps of our tech, our blood, our regrets. Bruce groaned, sitting up slowly. Wait, you're saying they used me? Fury nodded. They don't want to kill you, Banner. They want to replace you. Silence. Thor stepped forward. And Natasha? Fury's eye darkened. If they took her, it means they're accelerating. She's either bait or worse. Suddenly, a screen blinked on. Unauthorized transmission. Natasha appeared on the feed. Her face was bruised, but her eyes were calm. I need you all to listen carefully. I'm not captured. I went willingly. What? Bruce gasped. Tony's voice rose. Is this a trick? Natasha shook her head. You all need to hear the truth. Hulk's confession? That was just one layer. There's more. The screen glitched, then went black. A map blinked on the display. Coordinates deep in the Siberian wastes. A hidden bunker. Bruce's voice trembled. She went there on purpose. Why? Steve answered for him. Because she found something. Something we weren't meant to know. Thor slammed his fist. Then we follow. We end this. No, Fury said. You walk in blind, you play into their hands. Tony stepped forward. I don't care. I've seen enough secrets. It's time we tear theirs open. Hours later, the Quinjet cut through Arctic winds. Inside, the tension could be sliced with a blade. Tony prepped his weapons. Anyone else think it's a little convenient that Fury showed up right after Echo? Steve glanced over. You think he's lying? I think he always is. And I'm tired of it. Thor gripped Stormbreaker. I do not care who lies. I only care who bleeds. Bruce was quiet the entire flight. Guilt still soaked through every breath he took. They landed outside the coordinates. A massive steel hatch was buried beneath the snow. Tony's scanners pulsed. There's something down there. And it's not just a bunker. They descended. The inside was worse than any of them expected. Vats of green liquid. Rows of containment pods. Inside each, replicas. Broken versions of heroes. Hulk. Thor. Even Iron Man. Clones. Dozens of them. Bruce nearly collapsed. They've been duplicating us. Fury stepped forward. Welcome to Project Resonance. A failsafe that was never supposed to be real. Steve spun around. You knew. I shut it down years ago, Fury said. But someone turned it back on. Suddenly, a robotic voice echoed through the chamber. Welcome, Avengers. You have arrived at your replacement facility. Lights flared. Echo returned, but not alone. 3 others stepped from the shadows. Not just clones. Mutated versions of Tony, Steve, and Thor. Each twisted. Each enhanced. Their faces looked empty. Tony activated his suit. I've had enough of science projects. Steve pulled his shield. They're copying our powers, but not our hearts. Thor raised Stormbreaker. Then let us show them what they lack. The battle exploded. Iron Man versus Iron Wraith, his clone, equipped with Dark Arc-Tech and a corrupted AI voice. Captain America versus Sentinel Steve, equipped with an energy-based shield that absorbed and redirected every hit. Thor versus Storm Eater, a version of himself that fed on lightning, laughing with every bolt. Bruce watched it all, heart racing. But then, he heard something behind him. A whisper. Bruce. Natasha. He turned. She stood in a chamber, restrained, but unharmed. I found the truth, she said. But you're not going to like it. Bruce walked to the control panel, unlocking her chamber. Tell me. Natasha stepped out slowly. They aren't just cloning you. They've already replaced one of us. Bruce froze. She whispered, one of the Avengers isn't real. Bruce stared at Natasha, her words echoing louder than the alarms blaring through the bunker. One of us is a clone. She didn't blink. They replaced one of the core Avengers months ago. And none of you noticed. Tony, still locked in aerial combat with Iron Wraith, shouted, You're saying one of us is fake while we're getting our asses handed to us? Natasha didn't flinch. Yes. The battlefield inside the underground lab was chaos. Storm Eater roared as it devoured Thor's lightning, hurling it back with double the force. Steve gritted his teeth, deflecting attacks from Sentinel Steve, whose synthetic reflexes were 10 times faster. Every move was anticipated. Every strike mirrored. Who is it? Bruce asked, heart pounding. Natasha shook her head. I don't know. Not yet. But the clone's been feeding intel to the Alien Council. Every mission leak. Every failure. That was them. Suddenly, Echo smashed into the control chamber. It wasn't attacking Bruce or Natasha. It was scanning them. Watching. Natasha backed up, whispering, It's not trying to kill. It's trying to think. Bruce looked up slowly. It's evolving. Echo raised a hand, pressing a button on its chest. A hologram blinked to life above them. A voice echoed through the chamber, cold, commanding. You've outlived your usefulness. The clones disengaged. One by one, they stood still. Then the ceiling began to collapse. Tony blasted Iron Wraith into the wall and shouted, We're being buried. This whole place is rigged. Thor flew across the chamber, grabbing Steve, Bruce, and Natasha. Tony followed, repulsors flaring. As the bunker exploded behind them, the Quinjet autopiloted in from above. FRIDAY had locked onto their signals. Inside, the team was silent. Tony broke it. All right. Who's the clone? Steve shook his head. We can't know. Not without testing. Fury, back in the helicarrier control room, intercepted their signal. You don't have time for tests. The screen split into 6 live feeds. Cities around the world, Paris, Seoul, New York, Wakanda, and London, were under coordinated attacks. Massive shadow ships hovered above each one. Alien Council troops. Enhanced. Organized. Steve narrowed his eyes. They were waiting for us to be divided. Fury's voice hardened. And they succeeded. Suddenly, Bruce clutched his head. Images flooded his mind. Memories. But not his own. I'm seeing things, he muttered. Other missions. Other lives. Natasha gripped his arm. They didn't just clone bodies. They cloned memories. And they're leaking into you. That's when Tony realized it. They're trying to confuse us. If we don't know who we are, we turn on each other. Steve stood. We can't go into battle like this. Not until we know who's compromised. Bruce looked up, eyes shaking. It's me. It has to be. Echo, it's like a backup. What if I'm not the original anymore? Tony stared. You've been unstable since Sokovia. Thor stepped forward. Enough. This is their trick. Division is the goal, not truth. Natasha whispered, they weaponized trust. Suddenly, The lights on the Quinjet flickered. Then, Tony's armor locked up. A single line of code flashed inside his helmet. Primary unit, awake. Tony's eyes widened. What the hell? He screamed. Sparks exploded from his chest plate. Steve moved fast, ripping the arc reactor from Tony's suit before it could explode. Tony collapsed. Smoke rising, barely breathing. Bruce scanned the system. His armor was remotely hijacked. That wasn't him. But it was too late. Steve stood over Tony's unconscious body and said what no one expected. I think he's the clone. The Quinjet hovered in stealth mode above the burning skyline of New York. Inside, the silence was suffocating. Tony Stark lay on the floor, pale and still, smoke curling from his armor. Steve stood above him, fists clenched, unable to shake what he'd seen. I think he's a clone, Steve muttered again. Bruce's voice cracked. You think. You don't know. Thor stood between them. This is madness. Stark has fought beside us in 1,000 battles. He also nearly killed us 5 minutes ago, Steve snapped. His suit activated remotely. He had no control. But what if that was the clone's trigger, meant to frame him? Natasha countered. Bruce stepped forward. There's only one way to know. They stared at him. We run a full neural scan. Memory traces. Thought patterns. If something's off, we'll see it. But what if they copied everything? Steve said. What if the clone doesn't even know it's a clone? No one had an answer. FRIDAY guided them to a hidden Stark Industries lab beneath the city, a place even the Avengers didn't know existed. It was built for one purpose, testing identity. Inside the cold steel chamber, Bruce connected Tony's neural link to a deep scan AI. Natasha monitored the output. It's clean so far. Then suddenly, images began flickering on the screen. But they weren't memories. They were recordings, conversations, missions, files the real Tony should never have seen. Steve narrowed his eyes. Those are classified. Only Fury had access. Bruce froze. That's not possible. Unless. The room went silent. Tony groaned, waking up. Why does my skull feel like I swallowed a nuke? He looked up and saw everyone staring at him like he was a stranger. What? Bruce whispered. Tony, what's the last thing you remember from Sokovia? Tony hesitated, then smiled. But it wasn't his smile. The real Tony's grin was cocky, half arrogant, half genius. This one was cold, calculated. Nice trick, Natasha whispered. You almost had us. Tony stood slowly, so close. Suddenly, his body shimmered and shifted. Nanotech peeled back to reveal a synthetic shell beneath. His voice deepened. You weren't supposed to find this place. Steve raised his shield. Where is the real Tony? The clone smirked. Already replaced. Weeks ago. You've been fighting beside a ghost. Before anyone could react, he triggered a self-destruct. The lab trembled. Bruce screamed, Get out. Thor grabbed Natasha and Steve, flying upward. Bruce grabbed the clone and hurled him back as the lab exploded behind them. They landed hard on a rooftop overlooking Times Square, now swarming with alien council ships. Natasha looked back, wind whipping through her hair. Tony's gone. No, Bruce said. They said weeks ago. That means he's still alive. Somewhere. Steve's face darkened. And now they have everything. Our strategies. Our tech. Our weaknesses. FRIDAY came online. New transmission intercepted. Execute final phase. Target, Avenger Control Tower. Bruce's eyes widened. That's where all SHELD's legacy files are stored. Every Avengers protocol. Every backup plan. Natasha looked at Steve. If they access that tower, they'll control the global defense grid. Suddenly, the rooftop around them shimmered. A teleport gate opened, and standing inside it was the real Tony Stark. Alive. Weak. But furious. I hope you didn't miss me too much, he coughed. Steve pulled him into a hug without hesitation. No more doubts, Natasha said. Tony raised his eyes, blood dripping from his forehead. I saw everything in their prison. Echo is just the beginning. They've got someone worse. Who? Bruce asked. Tony looked at him, and for the first time, hesitated. "Banner," he said softly. "They've been messing with your mind. You might not be next." He paused. "You might already be theirs." Smoke drifted over a broken New York skyline. Alien council ships swarmed above, scanning, searching. In the center of it all stood the Avengers, bloodied, shaken, but still standing. The real Tony Stark, barely upright, stared at Bruce Banner. "They got inside your head, Bruce. I saw it. They weren't just cloning you. They were rewriting you." Bruce's eyes widened, panic creeping in. No, I'd feel it. I'd know." "That's the point," Natasha whispered. "You wouldn't." Suddenly, Banner staggered back, clutching his head. Visions flashed, memories that weren't his. Conversations that never happened. Destruction he couldn't explain. Thor stepped forward. "We must end this now, before they turn you into another weapon." But Bruce didn't respond. His skin started to pulse green. No, he roared. "I'm still me." The transformation was violent. Bones cracked. Muscles exploded outward. But this time, the Hulk's eyes weren't the familiar green. They glowed white. "Run," Tony shouted. But Hulk didn't attack. He stood frozen, trembling, caught between two forces, himself and whatever the Council had planted in his mind. Then a voice echoed through the sky, projected from the Council's mothership. "Execute Unit Gamma. Wipe the Avengers." Bruce screamed, and vanished into full Hulk form. The corrupted kind. He turned and charged. Thor blocked the first strike with Stormbreaker, but the impact sent him flying. Captain America dove, slamming his shield into Hulk's side. It barely slowed him. Tony, bleeding and exhausted, activated one last prototype from his gauntlet. A device labeled Mirror Protocol. He fired. A stasis field wrapped around Hulk, freezing him mid-leap. "Banner," Tony shouted. "If any part of you is still in there, fight this." Inside the bubble, Hulk thrashed, roaring in agony. "Don't let them win," Natasha whispered, stepping forward. "You are not a weapon. You're a hero." Tears streamed down Bruce's face inside the field. The glow in his eyes flickered. Then he did the impossible. He reached up and ripped his own neural inhibitor out of his skull. A flash of white light exploded. When it cleared, the Hulk was gone. Bruce Banner lay on the ground, unmoving. Steve ran to him, checking for a pulse. Nothing. Tony dropped to his knees. Thor looked away. Natasha didn't cry, but her hands shook. Then suddenly, Bruce gasped. He was alive. Barely. "I fought it," he whispered. "I shut it down from inside. But they'll keep coming, as long as Echo lives." Tony looked at the sky. "Then let's end this. One final mission. One last jet. Straight into the belly of the Council's flagship." The Avengers launched their assault. Steve led the charge. Natasha disabled their central AI. Thor destroyed their power core. And Tony, armed with a last EMP nuke, found Echo in the command chamber. "You look just like him," Echo said. "But you'll die like the rest." Tony smiled, weak but defiant. "You forgot one thing." He opened his chest plate, exposed the core. "And I'm not afraid to die." He overloaded the arc reactor. A shockwave pulsed through the ship. The Avengers barely escaped in time. Above Earth, the flagship exploded in a silent white flash. The war was over. 1 week later, a memorial was held. Not for the dead, but for the lost. Trust, brotherhood, innocence. Bruce recovered slowly, but he would never be the same. Tony rebuilt. Steve retired. Natasha vanished. The Avengers were still alive. But they were no longer a team. They were survivors. And somewhere deep in space, a single clone pod blinked to life. Eyes opened and smiled. White heavy checkmark final hook for viral retention. The war is over, but the clone war has just begun.